Hi, everybody. Welcome to our second book club discussion. It's Tana and Jason from Focus to Evolve. And today we are looking at, again, Deep Work, Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World by Cal Newport, but we are taking on part 2 today. So hi, Jason.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. So I'm just going to dive right into some of the things that were important to me when I was reading this. So in this part 2, Cal went from discussing, okay, why is deep work important, to now, all right, how do you do it? And he has some different philosophies for how you can fit deep work into your life. One of them is the monastic philosophy, where we kind of talked about last time how there are people who just kind of go off the grid. They go to their cabin in the woods, they write their book, they think their deep thoughts, they do that thing, they just disappear from the world. That personally is not a philosophy that I've ever been able to tap into at this point in my life. I kind of like to live in the world a little more. But his second philosophy, bimodal philosophy, is kind of more of a hybrid. It's, okay, they're monastic sometimes, some points of the year, some seasons, whatever, and then they come out of the monastic and they come back to the world and they live a normal life. So they kind of chop up their deep work periods into more manageable chunks. Number 3 was the rhythmic philosophy of deep work. His example was Jerry Seinfeld, and how he just writes jokes every day, and every time he writes jokes, he marks an X on the calendar. And at some point, you just don't want to stop the X's on the calendar because you want to make it part of every day. And that definitely is one of my main deep work philosophies as well. If there's something that's important to my life, I kind of set up rituals and programs within my life to make sure that I'm just consistently doing that. And then he had the journalistic philosophy, where you basically shift into deep work at a moment's notice whenever you have free time. And I also have kind of a journalistic kind of philosophy too, because I do have a 5-year-old, and sometimes it's just not, especially when he's home and doing kindergarten remotely, and he's been doing that this entire year, sometimes there is not the ability to necessarily carve out your deep work time. And it's kind of like, okay, he is distracted, or he's doing his own thing right now. Let me see what I can do for myself and what I need to get done today. So what did you have any thoughts when you were reading about Cal's different philosophies and where you kind of fit in?
Yeah, I fit into the rhythmic one personally. Like, I do a daily rhythmic. My practice of entering flow state or deep work, where my cognitive abilities get real big, and everyone else's can who practice deep work. I'm rhythmic. So I have it on my calendar. The architect has spoken. What is in my calendar, I do, because I know that's what builds out the dream, where the rubber hits the road. So I'm more rhythmic, but I do have a fantasy where I can't wait to practice some of that monastic stuff, where I go off into the Tibetan hills and go real deep on some subjects. And I will be doing that. It's just like you, I've got a teenager and a young daughter also. And, you know, I've got a couple companies going on, and it's just not that season of my life yet. Right. But I will be practicing that, where I will disappear for a week to 3 weeks, even a month to 3 months at a time, to chew on a thing. I can't wait to try it. Maybe it's not my deal, but I won't know until I try. But rhythmic for now.
Right. Yeah, I have a deep yearning for more of a monastic style kind of retreat, just to see what my brain and my spirit would do with all of that time. Like, I am just very curious as to what would happen in here if I just separated like that.
Yeah,
I think absolutely. It would be magical, for sure.
It would be. I think there would be times where you're like, I'm going to blow my brains out. But then I think the waves would pass, and I think you would eventually find a pretty amazing place where you really are getting the benefit that these monastic disappearing types do. So.
Right. Another thing that Cal wrote in his book, he said that people have from 1 to 4 hours a day that's possible for deep work. And like if you go into corporate America and you've got 8-hour work days, and it's almost like people expect that you are working those all 8 hours, some people even more. And it's like, okay, just scientifically, is that even possible for human beings to be working and to be at a, I mean, it is possible to work and not necessarily do deep work for 8 hours a day, but sometimes it's even thought that you have to be able to stay in it and be deep for 8 hours a day or more. And just hearing someone who's kind of an expert in this field say, you know, human beings at the beginning, they probably only have 1 hour in them a day. And if you're getting really good, you've got 4 hours a day. And past that,
Yeah.
it might not be possible.
Now, this is a really important point.
Right.
For me, the 8-hour workday was it's a hangover from the industrial age. We're mindless, putting a widget in a spot, putting a widget in a spot, there's no mind.
Right.
Now we're all mind thinkers. And as AI and computer learning kicks in more and more exponentially every day, less of that mindless industrial factory worker line 8-hour thing is going to be relevant. Mm-hmm. So meanwhile, we just blindly said, hey, I know everything's totally different, but still work that 8-hour thing.
Right.
It's just people not paying attention to reality. There's no brain science. There's not a white paper out there that says an 8-hour highly focused deep work every day, 5 days a week is the ticket. It's just not. There's no science to back it.
Right.
Luckily, bosses are starting to awaken. The message is getting out. There are books like Deep Work and Cal's Continued Work that are saying, hey, pay attention. The industrial age is officially over. And the 8-hour straight through workday is just ignorant. Sorry. But it won't be around long. In fact, it's changed a lot. Like so many, this COVID situation, it had its bads, it had its goods. One of the goods is it kind of smacked everyone around and said, hey, look, the same amount of stuff can get done when it's managed properly. It doesn't have to be 8 hours in a row under neon lights in one exact seat. It's just not how the human works. So again, all the praise in the world to Cal and the book Deep Work for just calling out the truth more and more and more. Let's keep going.
Right. And he did reference a company that took it so far to say, we're going to only work 4 days a week, and we're not going to dock your pay. We're not going to make you work 10 hours a day for 4 days a week. We're just going to keep it 8 hours a day for 4 days a week and see what happens. And nothing happened. Like nothing bad happened. And you just keep hearing these stories of companies who are playing with this and seeing that nothing bad is happening. And that's just the consistent refrain. Like if you give people more of their life back and don't kind of buy into the fallacy that they even can work or make their brains output more than what their brains can like scientifically do. Like, let's stop pretending and let's just cut it down so you give them more of their time back. And you get these employees who want to stay with your company and they want to do a good job, and they create parameters around, okay, what is really important for me to get done because I've got less hours to do it. And all of the shallow stuff just kind of has to fall away because they no longer have that fifth day where they think, oh, I've got another day. Like they have to kind of constrain themselves and think, okay, what is really vital to my role at this company and what's important for me to do now? Yeah.
And one of the soft benefits that comes of doing something as enlightening as that company did is that you can pay someone for their backbone, right? We've heard that, but you cannot buy someone's emotional energy, which is where the 100 times multiplier for your return on their salary is. Mm-hmm. When they are balanced, well rested, and feel good, you get a person that's 100 times what that tired person is.
Right.
I want anyone who disagrees with that to call me and let's have a real hard conversation. Because I've seen it. I've been the guy on the other side. I've been the guy who has now an engineered life and pays attention to how actual brain chemistry works in the human. And it's a huge, huge, huge difference.
Right.
Like Cal mentions in the beginning, or I don't know if he even said it, but it reminded me, if there was a bottom line expense
Right.
on the financial report that showed the expense of distraction and the expense of being tired emotionally, the company would shut down that night and not open back up till they fixed it. That's how dramatic that number would be.
Right.
So yeah, again, great preaching here, Cal.
Right. Yeah, he also said you have a finite amount of willpower that depletes as you use it. And it's a muscle that tires, and routines and rituals are important to managing your finite willpower. Because that's really important to know, because so many people think that they can like check their diet by willpower, or work longer by willpower, or work later by willpower. And he's saying, like, just don't play that game. It is false. You have only so much. And if you are using it in ways, instead of utilizing routines and rituals in your life, if you're trying to muscle your way through things, you're just going to get tired and burn out. The way to make this work is to figure out the systems that work for you in order to make the things that you want to do actually come to fruition.
Yeah, no, right on. I remember he uses the word decision fatigue.
Right.
So if you're not utilizing systems and processes and rituals, then you're doing like thousands of little decisions that don't need to be done, and you don't get that little brain battery power back. Every decision takes a little bit of that green away. And if you engineer your life right and engineer your environments so that they're not expiring you, but rather inspiring you towards your intentions, then man, you're wasting a lot of great resource in just making decisions that don't need to be made anymore.
Right.
I like to point out the extreme examples of that. Like, well, there's so many of them. Steve Jobs, how he only wore jeans and a black shirt.
Right.
Zero. And that was it. That was on purpose. So that he spent no brain power deciding what to wear that day.
Right.
Black shirt, jeans, go. Or whatever it was. I can't really remember. But great example. Just, you can pop those things all throughout your life. And all of a sudden it's just, you're just kind of sliding on through instead of, oh, what about that? Oh, that top doesn't match. Right. Where's my glass of water? Things like that. So yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah. It's weird. Oh, go ahead.
Last point for anyone who does listen to this, who has interest in kind of zooming in on this a little more. There's a guy named Jim Bunch who trains people how to become an engineer of your own environments. And just YouTube search Jim Bunch and watch anything that comes out of his mouth. He's amazing.
Right. Yeah. It's preposterous, the number of systems and rules I have around my life and what I do in it and what exists in it. Like, if I went through just my day and spoke out loud to someone and I said, okay, I do this at this time because I decided long ago that this is the best time for this. And like, the number of rules, people would just be like, but it helps me so much to just like coast through the day and get in literally everything I want in a day, and have still more willpower reserves to deal with, okay, there's this big thing happening with my son, or there's this big thing happening in this area, and I still have all those reserves, even while I still have all the things in my life that I want to be there. So systems and rituals are the way to kind of fit it all in. And P.S. Focus to Evolve can help you develop those systems and rituals, because that is our cup of tea, kind of. I love talking about.
Right. And I have some freedom loving friends who would be dry heaving in their mouth a little bit, hearing you say, you're going to take away all my freedoms by having all these rules and systems. I'm so sorry that you've never given it a shot, because the amount of freedom that opens up in your life because of it can't even be described with words. It's like trying to describe what it's like to have a kid to single guy in his 20s.
Right.
You're never going to understand. You just got to go try it. And then you're like, wow, I actually have tremendous amounts more freedom because of these rules and systems that I've predetermined. That way I can just wake up and flow. And by the way, you are the engineer of these rules. You can shift them at any point. Freedom still exists.
Right. Right. It's more just, you're very right. A rule that you make for yourself is not the same as a rule imposed on you by someone else. Like if you decide that, oh, I want to make exercise a part of my day, and you figure out the systems for making that actually happen in your day consistently and rhythmically and all the time, then that is putting the freedom of making that choice and putting it into your life a reality. And if at some point you decide, okay, I don't want to exercise anymore, then you take that right out and you make a new rule. It's not about restricting what you want in your life. It's about pinpointing what you want in your life and then actually putting it there and implementing it.
Right.
And there is no greater freedom than you deciding what you want there, doing it, and having integrity with yourself and keeping promises to yourself. That's true freedom. And at any point you can juggle it around to look exactly the way you want it to be.
Yep.
Another big point that Cal has in his book is talking about the importance of like idleness and boredom and non-work hours. And this is also something that you and I in our trainings with people heavily focus on, which is unfocus. He says, like downtime aids insights, it recharges energy, and when you embrace boredom, you're no longer training your brain to seek distraction. So many people, the moment they are not doing something, they're just kind of haphazardly, without even knowing it, grabbing their phone, looking at whatever's on there, and they're not allowing themselves to be bored, even if they're just standing in a line for 2 minutes, even if they're at a meal with someone and the conversation has stalled for a second. Instead of like going into your mind and thinking thoughts or mulling over the problems of your day and how you want to make it better, instead of that, we're just automatically reaching for these things that are easier and teaching ourselves by the repetition of not going into boredom, not going into thought, not going into a higher self, that this is easier and this is what we do when there's downtime. And so when you're trying to focus, your body is still like reaching towards that screen, and it's harder to focus even when you want to focus because you're so used to that like muscle memory of grabbing your phone and looking at it and how easy that is. I thought that was a very important part of the book, where he just kind of dives into, you need to let your brain rest from time to time, and this is why that's important.
Yeah, and I think he also used the word that people practice distractibility in their leisure. I thought that was a very eloquent way to state what we're saying here. So when you do deep work, if in your off time you are practicing, hey, universe, just have at it, I'm going to look at every sparkly, shiny thing and be entertained, versus no, body, it's time actually just to rest and not be distracted and jump on things. It's just be quiet. Ryan Holiday's book, Stillness is, Stillness, whatever book it is, Stillness is the Key, I think. He talks about the power of stillness. And so if you practice non-distractibility by not giving into the urges in your leisurely time, you are a much stronger, deep worker when it's time to focus. Much less effort goes into it. It all goes back to that oligodendrocyte cells building myelin. Therefore, you are more insulated to focus. That's the physiological chain to that. So absolutely, let's, in your off time, practice non-distractibility instead of practicing distractibility, so that you can be more focused when you actually do work without as much effort.
Right.
Great stuff.
And for you, what does practicing non-distractibility look like? I know for me, it's avoiding my phone, except when I actually like schedule time in my day for my phone to look at, okay, you've got 15 minutes to look at social media, just to see if there are pretty pictures and if there's inspiration that can be gleaned in that 15 minutes. But the rest of the time, like when you're not doing your professional stuff, when you're not working with your family and making that a stronger place in your life, when there's extra time, what do you really want to do with that? And oftentimes for me, it's like reading or listening to podcasts. That's kind of my R&D into myself time. Or it is going for a walk and kind of doing a moving meditation where I just let my brain go in whatever direction it wants to go. So what does it look like for you to practice?
Yeah, two or three things come to mind. I mean, meditation, great one, where you sit down, and even if it's just 5 minutes, they say 13 minutes is kind of as minimal as you want to go. But if it's just a few minutes just to practice, I'm going to sit here and just breathe. And yeah, 100,000 thoughts are going to come. You can't shut off your thoughts, just like you can't shut off your vision. Your thoughts are not yours. I'm sorry if you think they are, but you can't shut them off. So you just observe them. Don't do any impulse. Don't get up and change the dog's water because you suddenly remember it. That every time you deny an impulse, that's what we're talking about. And so meditation is a great way that I personally practice not being distracted and not letting my body and my impulses own my life. Mm-hmm. The other one is, I'll sit down and go to my YouTube, and YouTube has me figured out big time. I mean, every suggestion from their algorithms, I want to watch. I have to watch. They're so dang good. But I've logged a lot of hours in, so it's great that they know me, and I actually love their suggestions. However, here's the practice. When I sit down to YouTube, before I turn it on, I decide what I want to learn about or hear about. Maybe it's a cacao ceremony. Maybe it's something about work. Maybe it's a new skill. Maybe I just want to hear what Tim Bellew's newest interview is. I don't care what it is, but I decide up front, then watch it. And as the suggestions show below it, I don't go and watch them. Mm-hmm. Like I exercise. No, I'm doing what I'm doing right now, and it was pre-decided. That is the essence of it. And YouTube presents an awesome practicing arena because their suggestions are so good. Like they know you more than you know you. That's actually true. So there we go. Those are two ways that I practice exercising non-distractibility in leisure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cal also makes important arguments that we shouldn't view our non-work hours as unimportant. Because so many people view their day as their work day, but there are a lot more hours in the day, even that you're not sleeping, that you're kind of just discounting because they're not the hours that you're getting paid for, I guess. And a large majority of people, they just kind of let the universe decide what happens in those hours. But if you get more in tune with your leisure hours and you put more thought into, okay, what do I want to do in those hours, either before or after work when I'm not sleeping, there is so much that you can fit into the other hours of a day than just work and sleep. There are full books that you can put into a week if you utilize those hours, which means there are 52 books that you could read in a year if you're reading a book a week. Like there is so much that can be done if you're just not discounting those other awake hours that you have in a day.
Yeah, this is such an important point. 168 hours we're all given each week. Laura Vanderkam is an awesome woman to do a YouTube search on her and watch some of her talks. Mm-hmm. But she zooms right into this 168 hours. You sleep roughly 50, you work roughly 50, and it leaves you about, 70 hours, 68 hours left over after sleeping and after working.
Right.
And so it's a lot of hours. And if you don't think it's a lot of hours, do a 1 hour silence meditation once where you're not allowed to close your eyes. You actually stare at a blank wall. You sit upright, you don't lean, this isn't napping time. You will get a really good respect for what 1 hour is. It's a long time. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't feel like those extra 70 hours every week after sleeping and working. It doesn't feel like it's a lot of hours because you're doing what Cal's talking about here. You're not taking it seriously.
Right.
You have an amazing gift. You have like 70 hours to do whatever with. It's a ton. And Laura Vanderkam doesn't give any hall passes to people who say, I'm just too busy, I don't have any time. Yeah, you're just making bad decisions and you're not being deliberate. That's what she says, and I happen to agree with her.
I do too. And we are both parents, and Laura is a parent of 5. So
yeah, go argue with her, a parent of 5 and a full-time keynote speaker and trainer. Like, she's crushing it.
Right. It's impressive. 5 is quite a few children. And if she can say, yeah, I can still find time to do the things I want to do, then you might want to look at how much you love your excuses more than you love what you want to do with your
do you want to, it reminds me of that saying, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? It's your choice. Right. It's a really good one.
No one will stop you from being right in your own life. If that's what you choose to think is, I've actually just taken the word busy and the word bored. I took the word bored out of my vocabulary when I was in middle school because I had a music teacher who put up a quote that said, only boring people get bored. And I thought, I don't ever want to be boring. And so I just never used the word bored again.
Oh, I love that one. That's great.
Yeah. And busy is another one that in the last year I've just said, nope, that's just not a word that is allowed to be used in my life anymore, because it suggests that at some point I didn't have a choice in what goes on in my days. And at every point, even when I worked in corporate America, I always had a choice. And sometimes it would have meant that I no longer worked in corporate America, and that's really scary. But at the same time, there is still that choice. And so I just don't use busy anymore.
Man, that's great. Thanks for bringing that up. Telling people you're busy all the time. I'm so busy. Oh, dude, I'm so busy. I mean, we've all been there. We all say it. We have friends around us that say it. You just pretend like every time you say it, you're saying, I'm helpless. I'm a victim.
Right.
I'm just powerless. Because that's all you're actually saying. The truth is, you have lots of choices. I know it doesn't seem like it until you really get good at exercising choice, but there are several things where you could be punting out a little bit. You can work a different way around it. You can delegate it. You can just say no because you are maxed out. Mm-hmm. It's weird how when people say no to other people, that person who said no sometimes observes that person being said no to, the response of, oh, that means you don't love me. The proverbial, you don't love me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't actually mean, they're not going to use those words, but they get offended by you saying no to them. Well, guess what? You're not responsible for their emotions. You're not. I am an ingratiation machine. I was a yes man, brown-nosed corporate climbing dude for 2 decades of my life. Believe me, I know what it is to just say yes to everything. And it cost me an amazing amount of quality of life in those decades. Mm-hmm. So I am no longer responsible for the emotions of other people. I am conscientious. I will absolutely help anyone in real need, and I will help us all to thrive. But I am very at ease saying no now and getting better. It's a long journey. But yeah, this is a really cool subject right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cal is very deep into the weeds of, he wants you to live and not just exist. He says that in the book. I want you to live, not just exist. And that's a big part of what we try and teach.
It is
as well.
Yeah, it's the hierarchy, the top of the I think it's Maslow's hierarchy, self-actualization. Mm-hmm. I think that without these principles that Cal Newport talks about in his book Deep Work, I think you're going to have some trouble actualizing. Mm-hmm. I think it's that fundamental.
Right. Is there anything else that you want to discuss the book?
Just two, really only one more point that I thought was really cool. And he talked about how high-speed multitaskers, which if you're in corporate America in general, or corporate in any Western environment, you're probably some version of a high-speed multitasker. Yeah. The problem with that is Cal was talking about how those folks, which is about 98% of all of those folks, myself, included before I started waking up to this stuff, they can't filter out what's important.
Right.
They just multitask everything.
Right.
And so they're doing the 1 priority and the 10 priority things with same level of urgency. They'll even respond to unsolicited ads in their email because it's in their inbox. So this idea of not multitasking, going deep, one thing at a time, eliminates all that. And it's pretty surprising how quickly I found that once I started to grasp that, I thought, oh my gosh, most of this doesn't even need to be done. It doesn't. And I started saying no to people, and then I realized people didn't even care that I was saying no in most cases. They're just like, oh, okay. I thought it was life and death before. So yeah, this multitasking, high speed, hamster wheel sprinting, drinking from the fire hose of our inboxes, this is the stuff we get right to the nub of in our trainings. And this isn't about work. This is about quality of life.
Right.
This is about the minutes of your life that are going away and never coming back.
Right.
So you better do it right. Like, take that seriously.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Deep work is definitely a foundational book in our practice. And so it made a lot of sense for us to kind of touch base with it first. And I highly recommend that, because we didn't go into everything, and there are far more tips and ideas and things that Cal talks about in order to actually implement deep work in your life. And I would suggest that you pick up the book and read the whole thing, because we didn't get into even the half of it in our discussion. But thank you to everybody who is listening or will listen in the future, because the beauty about recordings is someone could listen to this years from now and get something out of it. So thank you for your time, and thank you, Jason, for this lovely discussion. Till the next one.
Thank you, Tana. That was an awesome discussion. Thank you very much. We'll be doing our next book chat. Let's decide what later, but looking forward to seeing all you guys again soon.
Bye. Bye.